Now, when we're analyzing movies, entertainment, and just art in general, it's all fairly subjective. You could have two people with two different opinions, and neither one is necessarily wrong. That being said, Tim Pool is objectively wrong about Black Panther here. And so, as a big fan of the Marvel movies, this bothered me a little bit. And so we're gonna play the clip and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it.
I feel like they're actually critical of the left. It's similar with Black Panther. Black Panther was like the left loved it. You've seen Black Panther?
Yes.
So like the left was treating it like this great accomplishment, and it was so amazing, but it was actually politically nuanced. It was a nation with a literal wall around its borders refusing immigrants and refugees versus an ethno supremacist who wanted to take over the world and supply a certain race with weapons. And I'm like, that's a nuanced political take. I dig it. Now we got the Falcon and Winter Soldier.
So here's the thing. Spoiler alert, by the way. Spoiler alert about Black Panther. But at the end of the movie, they actually do kind of what Killmonger was advocating for. And that's one of the reasons, because here's the thing. So Wakanda, for if anyone hasn't seen Black Panther, if you haven't seen the movie in a while, Wakanda is this place that, in some ways people have said it's supposed to represent a African country that like wasn't ravaged by colonialism. But even if you don't look at it from that angle, you could just view it as this country in Africa that had a ton of natural resources thanks to the vibranium there. I guess not natural resources, but that's not the point. Anyway, so you have Wakanda, who's very, very developed. And then obviously you have the rest of Africa, which has been ravaged by colonialism. And just all over the world, you have, people of African descent that have not necessarily good conditions. And Wakanda largely is just looking out for themselves. They're kind of just making sure that they're doing good, they're protecting themselves. And that's kind of where they're at the beginning of the movie. Then we're introduced to Killmonger, and Killmonger basically has this very radicalized view because he feels like he's seen, like I said, people of African descent all over the world not treated very well in systems of oppression, and he wants to do something about that because he sees Wakanda as this place that has these resources that isn't helping. Now, the way that he wants to go about helping, obviously very damaging. He takes a very violent approach, and what he wants to do is kind of use what Wakanda has set up around the world for this very kind of violent way, in a way of trying to help these people, but like I said, pursuing this in not necessarily ethical ways. That being said, though, they beat Killmonger at the end, but then you see that T'Challa and Shuri, they take kind of the underlying message to heart, and they actually set up outreach centers, and I believe it's somewhere in California, and then they set them up all over the world. Is the implication is that they're going to be, they have the speech at the United Nations and say that Wakanda is going to be sharing its resources with the rest of the world so that they can help and bring greater prosperity. The point is not that Wakanda had like a strong border and that was what was supposed to be taken away. Like, that is not the message that's being sent at all. The fact that Wakanda was not sharing what it had with the rest of the world was viewed as a bad thing. Like, that is the interpretation you're supposed to have of the movie. That's what they're trying, like you're supposed to get from it. And that's why, like I said, so many people like Killmonger as a villain is because, obviously not a good guy, but he has part of what he said. People watch it and they say, oh, what he's saying kind of makes sense a little bit. They don't agree, like I said, with the way he's trying to do it, but they're like, oh, that, and you're supposed, that's, why largely considered one of the better MCU villains. But Tim Pool, and this is also, I mean, it just shows though that like Tim Pool is just looking at this stuff in a really weird way. He was talking about Falcon and the Winter Soldier prior to this, and he was saying that it's like supposed to be tackling critical race theory. Like, that is, he says it's supposed to be like a critique of critical race theory. In his, it doesn't make any sense, his explanation for it. And then his guests seem to like basically like trying to disagree with him without actually saying they disagree with him. But it's just, I just can't imagine watching the movie and thinking that is the viewpoint you're supposed to take. That like, oh, Wakanda was actually good with what they were doing at first, because that's the point. Is like what they were doing was kind of I guess selfish is the word to use. I don't know. Maybe that's not the perfect word to describe it. But they did have a ton, and they weren't sharing that, and they learned at the end that they should be sharing that. And a lot of people would describe that as a bit of a progressive message or a leftist message, but you don't even have to look at it that way. You could look at it just as a human message, as a humanitarian message. It's not necessarily overtly political, or at least it shouldn't be. The idea of like helping those around you, helping people that are struggling. But the takeaway is definitely not that Wakanda was good because they had strong borders. And so I just found that really, really insane. I couldn't believe that Tim Pool said that, but I shouldn't really be surprised. So anyway, if you guys disagree with what I had to say, maybe you had a different view of Black Panther, definitely let me know in the comments. But if you did enjoy the video, make sure to like and subscribe, and have a great day.